Our first performer is Angela Urata in The Slaughtering of the Mink. With Trump's threats of mass deportation, it feels more urgent than ever to share the stories of Japanese-American incarceration during World War II. Not only to ensure that history is not repeated, but also to honor the legacy of Angela's family. Please welcome Angela Urata.
I am 10 years old, sitting in my grandmother's narrow, dark apartment at the Bush Hotel, a residence hotel for elderly Asian immigrants on Jackson Street, South Jackson Street, in Chinatown's International District. The smells are sharp, bitter, pungent. My grandmother moved here before I was born, after her husband died. She beckons me to sit beside her. Paralyzed on the left side, her face droops. She wears a brace on her leg. She only speaks Japanese. I don't understand her. I do not relax into her thin and brittle body. I'm afraid of her. She is familiar to me, yet foreign. This is the strongest childhood memory I have of my grandmother. I am carried in the gestational waters of memory, of stories carried in my body, of the land where I was born, of the land that lives within me. Mists hang low over the fjords and islands of a temperate rainforest, canopied by Sitka spruce, yellow cedar, western hemlock. The Tongass National Forest in southeastern Alaska is a crown jewel, stretching across 17 million acres. Bald eagles take flight from heavy branches. The salt wind bites. The steely frigid waters are indifferent to the passage of time. Before my story, the land held other stories. The Tlingit, the Haida, the Shinshin have lived here for 10,000 years at least. There is evidence of their travels throughout the archipelago. The whales and salmon carved in rock are washed by the tides, ebbing and flowing for millennia. The Tlingit still sing the songs and dance the dances at the tribal house on Chief Shakes Island. Across the Pacific, my own lineage begins. I am the granddaughter of Chio. 1,000 generations carried 5,000 miles across the waters. It is 1916 and my 27-year-old grandmother, wearing a double-breasted wool coat, black Oxfords with thick soles, steps onto a new land, leaving behind in Japan her firstborn, a daughter. In her imagination, this is a temporary separation, not an abandoning. They never reunite. Immigration laws erode the mother-daughter bond. My grandmother stows the sorrow in the palm of her hand. It closes tight. With the other hand, she reaches it to the vast and limitless sky. She joins her pleasantly stout husband, Ryotaro Urata, who caught the fever for gold and rushed north to Alaska, panning for flakes and nuggets He did not strike a vein that would gild his life, but he settled on Reno Island at the mouth of the Stickeen River, bustling with thousands of prospectors stampeding the Klondike. He threw open the doors of a Chinese restaurant to feed the rough and tumble dreamers. I am reconstructing a story where the waters of memory bring me back to my grandmother, a woman as foreign to me as the language that she spoke, the first language of my mother and my father, and a language that I learned in a university classroom, wildly inflecting verbs and rhythmically rapping the Japanese syllabary. A, I, U, E, O, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, sa, shi, su, se, so, ta, chi, tu, te, to, na, ni, nu, ne, no, ha, hi, hu, he, ho, ma, mi, mu, me, mo, da, di, ru, re, ro. My tongue stumbles and trips over these foreign sounds that were silenced in Minidoka concentration camp in Idaho. The reconstituting of a tongue and a story restores the shatter. It is an act of resistance and love. She is carried over the waters, and my grandmother navigates them ramrod straight. She births two sons. The eldest, Ichiro, commonly known as Jack, is my father. The other son, Yukio, is known as Bob. Although slender and fine-boned and slightly tall, she is not a slip of a woman. She is as fierce as the mink that she farms. Gambaru is a Japanese word for this ferocity, the elegance of tenacity, buffered by humility, grace, and good judgment. Mink grab their prey by the neck, sinking in small, sharp teeth. Semi-aquatic and long-bodied, they are agile in the water, good at fishing. They are loners, crepuscular, rambling along the shoreline at dawn and at dusk. Small and sleek, it takes 60 to 80 pelts to make a single coat. At the beginning of the 20th century, fur farms were the third largest industry in Alaska, following fishing and mining. At its height in 1929, there were 700 fur farms throughout the territory, 200 of them in southeastern Alaska. One of them, my grandparents, who operated a mink farm from 1927 to 1942. I imagine my grandmother grabbing a mink with her bony hands and breaking its neck. I don't wear fur and never will, but I can respect my grandmother's hunger for autonomy, her acumen for business, her finding a place where a first-generation Japanese American could find the wildness and wilderness of possibility on the Alaskan frontier. On the front pages of the February 3rd, 1938 edition of the Wrangell Sentinel, a headline declares, "Urata has successful mink year." They are carried over the waters, and my 43 days at sea, my grandparents are gaunt and pale as a steamship pulls into the rumpled and mountainous Korean peninsula. There are 50 breeder mink to unload and deliver to a mink farm operated by my grandmother's brother. What did it take to establish mink farming in Korea? What might have been taken? Land, lives, sovereignty, for this farm to exist? What did my grandparents see? What might they have turned away from? How might they have been part of a taking of Japan's invasion, its occupation, and its atrocities? 43 days at sea, over the waters, back to Alaska, and another headline, December 30th, 1938, Urata exports breeder mink to North Japan. Stories are complex, full of light and full of shadow. My grandparents prosper selling and farming breeder mink. Across the street, the Eons, a Japanese family. The husband, Aitaro Yamasaki, took the name Eon when he was adopted by a white family while living in San Francisco. His wife, Jessie, is Tlingit. The Eons and my grandparents are two of the wealthiest families on the island, but the ground is never stable or solid for families like ours. My grandparents deposit their savings in a Japanese bank. The war breaks out, the accounts are frozen, the yen collapses. Overnight, their savings vanish. But financial ruin is just the beginning. The incarceration of 125,000 Japanese Americans, over 40,000 who were children, did not begin with Executive Order 9066. It lived in exclusion acts. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the Japanese Exclusion Act of 1924. It lived in alien land laws. Land to farm, never truly theirs, eventually to be taken. It lived in naturalization bans, like grandparents, aliens ineligible for citizenship. It lived in surveillance, seeping in to everyday lives. Executive Order 9066, signed on February 19th, 1942, gave permission to what had long been unfolding. We are already being watched. We are already being taken. The names were already known. Some of them lived in Wrangell. It is March 1942, and the FBI arrived quietly in Wrangell. They have come by steamship bearing a list of names. My grandfather is taken in the early hours, without charges, without warning. There is no time to say goodbye, not knowing whether he will see his family again. Where he's taken first, I do not know. There are no records, no letters, no stories passed down. That part of the journey is held in silence, swallowed by time. What I do know is that he is eventually taken to Lordsburg, New Mexico, a prison camp, a desolate military facility for so-called alien enemies. Alien enemy, a legal term written into law in 1798. Still alive, still wielded, used to justify incarceration without cause. used to make people disappear. My grandmother remains, as my grandfather is taken because he's an immigrant, because he's a Japanese. My grandmother remains waiting, not knowing. In Lordsburg, two elderly Issei men, so much like my grandfather, too frail to keep pace on a forced march, are shot from behind. Their deaths explained away. I don't know if my grandfather saw this happen. I imagine he feared that he could be next. There is no justice. There is no reckoning. Only what comes next. It is June 1942, and with just a few hours of notice to pack up a lifetime of living, my grandmother and father are slaughtering and pelting the mink. The youngest Bob has already joined the army. There is no time to mourn, only motion. They don't know where they are going. They don't know how long they will be gone. They can take only what they can carry. A bit of food for the journey, onigiri, senbei, bedding, warm clothing, and family photographs to tether them to what is being left behind. The Eons are planning to keep their mink farm running, and Ella's is Plinkett, so she can stay behind and tend to the animals. The first night after the Eon family is taken, their cages are torched with the mink still inside. Not all neighbors are kind. They are carried over the waters. A steamship winds its way south through the Alaskan Panhandle, picking up the Japanese families in Juneau, in Petersburg, in Wrangell, in Ketchikan. Take a name, hold it with you. These are the people, these are the families. Akagi, Fukuyama, Hamada, Inoue, Ito, Kanazawa, Kito, Komatsubara, Kono, Kumasaka, Kuwamoto, Matsubayashi, Mori, Moriuchi, Mukai, Nakamura, Shimizu, Shiota, Taguchi, Tamaki, Tanaka, Toyokawa, Wada, Yamamoto, Yoshida, Eon, Urata. A litany of names, of lives fully lived, add up to about 250 who were forcibly removed from their homes in Alaska. I imagine my grandmother wearing a pillbox hat, wire-rimmed glasses, and a face set in stone, arriving at her first place of detention, Camp Harmony, the Puyallup Assembly Center, a state fairground near Tacoma, Washington. Checking first for rats, she lays bedding on a straw mattress where she sleeps for 4 months in an 8-by-10 horse stall, the walls hastily clean, still stained and smelling of manure. "30 hours by train from the Puyallup Detention Center. With windows covered with opaque brown paper, she rides through hours of darkness, unseen, vanishing. They are being disappeared. They are vanishing. My grandmother is taken to one of 10 U.S. concentration camps, Minidoka in southern Idaho, a place of bitter cold and blistering heat where nearly 10,000 people, my grandmother one of them, were imprisoned behind barbed wire for over 4 years. Armed guards in watchtowers survey the perimeter. My grandmother surveys rows and rows and rows of tar paper barracks, thin-walled, hastily hammered into place, each family allotted a space no larger than 16 by 20 feet. Fine volcanic dust coats everything, entering lungs, sticking to clothing and skin. Shikata Ganai, she says, it can't be helped. She bends down and touches the ground. This is where silence begins. This is where rage is swallowed. This is where shame is passed down. This is survival. And from this silence, I learned to speak. I am carried in the gestational waters of memory, of loss, of grief, and of return. Here, possibility is born, rooted in legacy and love. I am the granddaughter of Chio. 1,000 generations carried 5,000 miles across the waters. And as her grandmother, I ask you to take your names and raise them up in solidarity and repeat after me. No more U.S. concentration camps.
No more U.S. concentration camps.
No family separation.
No family separation.
No mass deportation.
No mass deportation.
No more cages.
No more cages.
We are the people. We are the stories. Organize, rise, resist. Tell your story. Okage Samade. I am who I am because of you.